Hi, my name is William Schaeffer, and today's book review is of Squanto and the Pilgrims by A.M. Anderson, part of the American Adventure series by Wheeler Publishing Company. I bought this book on a whim at a used book sale, mostly because it was an old book and it had illustrations and the price was right. I forget, $1 or something. It ended up being a very enjoyable and well-written book. I have read other of these books of the 40s and 50s that were written for junior high age children, and some of them are pretty much unreadable. But this book by A.M. Anderson was quite readable. And the story of Squanto is an amazing story. We're all familiar with him from Thanksgiving and the Thanksgiving tableau. But the real story, and this is mostly from this book, he was part of a woodlands tribe on the East Coast in what is now Plymouth Rock, Massachusetts. And as a young boy, apparently distinguished himself, especially during a particular coming of age rite where he killed and trapped a white wolf. Nevertheless, he was an outstanding boy and had a fairly idyllic childhood. Now, this was around 1600, and Squanto was a young man, about 20 or 21 years old, and he was engaged to be married. And at this time, the English traded with all the tribes and groups along the east coast of North America by just sailing their ships over, trading, and then sailing back to England, unlike the Spanish who came over and took everything over. And at this time, Squanto would trap animal pelts and they'd swim out to the boat. It was customary to canoe or swim out to the boat and exchange the pelts for other trade goods. And during one of these trading excursions, he and a number of the other young men were captured, and they were captured into slavery, and they were put in chains and sailed back to England, where he became a servant, a house servant. Most of the citizens of England or Great Britain were slaves, servants. That's why they came to America later on, to be free. Well, he was a young man separated from his people and separated from his fiancée in a strange land where they spoke a strange language. And he was 20, 21 years old. And over the next 20 years, he learned to read and write, and he learned to speak English. And he learned to trade. And he learned how the money worked. And he saved enough money to buy his own freedom while working his trade. And then he saved enough money to get passage back to North America, back to his village, back to his people and his fiancée. It had been 20 years. And when he got back, everyone in his village was dead of the plague. They all died. And that's why the Pilgrims had such an easy time landing there and establishing a village there, because they came just after a plague had decimated the entire east coast of North America. 90% of the indigenous population died in this plague. This is common knowledge in history. So what a sad thing for Squanto, and what a sad life, and what a difficult life. And yet he met it courageously and valiantly and successfully as best as he could. And when he got back, and everyone he knew and all his family was dead, He did the best he could. And he helped the Pilgrims, and he taught them how to survive in that region with that kind of agriculture. And what an inspiration for you. For no matter how bad things are and how difficult they seem, few people have had trials and tribulations as great as something as this. To be carried away to a foreign land as a slave, as a servant, to have to learn an entirely different way of life, a different language and a way of writing, and succeed in that foreign environment when there's no one to help you but yourself. So it's kind of a sad story, and one I can relate to. But at the same time, there's a quiet majesty in the character of Squanto, in the way we all meet our misfortune with valor and pride and courage. And I think that was an amazing part of this story. So I highly recommend reading Squanto by A.M. Anderson, or just read history in general. Thank you. Leave your comments below.